You see that three-pointed star, and you immediately think luxury, performance, German engineering, right? Today, Mercedes-Benz is this absolute titan, worth something like $80 billion. But what if I told you this global empire didn't start in some high-tech lab, but with a poor engineer whose first invention actually terrified people? Well, let's get into the insane story of Mercedes-Benz. So on the one hand, you have the dream, the 1886 patent motor wagon. This was it, the world's very first car, a three-wheeled carriage that, get this, topped out at a blazing 7 miles per hour. And on the other hand, you have the reality of today, a marvel of technology and raw power. The journey from that first little cart to the cars we see now, well, it's a story of pure genius, incredible struggle, and some really, really dark compromises. And that quote right there is really the heart of it all. Because behind all the luxury and the incredible legacy, there's a history that's just so much more complicated than a simple success story. The brand we know today was absolutely forged through innovation, but it was also forged through a collaboration with one of the most monstrous regimes in history. Okay, so let's rewind all the way to the beginning, to the man himself, Karl Benz. He was born in Germany in 1844, and he came from basically nothing. His dad, a locomotive driver, died when Karl was only 2, leaving his mom to raise him under some incredibly tough circumstances. But his mother, she sacrificed everything to make sure he got an education. And man, did it pay off. Karl was a natural, a gifted mechanic who passed his university entrance exam when he was just 15 years old. After bouncing around for a while, he finally opened his own workshop. And by 1879, he'd done it. He developed a working gasoline engine. That was the first critical piece of his big dream, the horseless carriage. But the whole dream almost crashed and burned before it even got started. See, Karl's first business partner was, let's just say, unreliable, and the company was about to go under. And that's when his fiancée, Bertha Ringer, stepped in. She believed in his vision so much that she used her own dowry, her wedding money, to buy out the bad partner and save the entire business. It is no exaggeration to say that without Bertha, there would be no Mercedes-Benz, period. With Bertha's backing, Karl finally built it, the patent motor wagon. Now, this wasn't just some engine strapped to a cart. He designed the whole vehicle from the ground up around the motor. It was the first true automobile. But when he drove it in public for the first time, the reaction was, well, it wasn't great. People were skeptical. They were scared. Some even called it an infernal carriage and were totally convinced it was going to explode. So here's the situation. Karl has this incredible invention, but he's got no market. His own business partners think it's a huge waste of time, and the public is afraid of it. What the automobile needed desperately was a big marketing moment to prove to everyone that it was the future. I mean, think about it. How do you convince the world that this loud, strange new machine is better than a good old reliable horse? Well, you don't wait for permission. While Karl was hesitating, his wife Bertha decided she was just going to take matters into her own hands, in secret. One morning in 1888, without a word to her husband, Bertha grabbed the car, her 2 teenage sons, and just took off on a 66-mile journey to visit her mother. Now, this wasn't just a drive. This was the world's first ever long-distance road trip in a machine that almost nobody believed in. And this journey was an absolute odyssey. There were no paved roads, okay? Just dusty tracks meant for horses. There were no gas stations. She had to buy fuel literally from a pharmacy. She even had to perform her own mechanical repairs on the side of the road. The whole trip took over 12 hours, and it became an absolute sensation. It generated massive publicity and proved, once and for all, that the automobile wasn't just some weird novelty. It was here to stay. Bertha's incredible drive really ignited the business. But, they weren't the only game in town for long. A fierce rival popped up pretty quickly, another German company called Daimler, led by Gottlieb Daimler and this brilliant engineer named Wilhelm Maybach. And these two companies had completely different philosophies. Karl Benz, he hated racing. He was all about making his cars practical and super reliable. Daimler, on the other hand, they were chasing speed and flashy modern design. In 1901, they built this revolutionary race car for a wealthy client, and he insisted they name it after his daughter, Mercedes. That car was a massive success, and the name just stuck. For years, this rivalry pushed both companies to be better. But after Germany lost World War I, the economy was an absolute wreck. To survive,
These two bitter rivals were forced to do the unthinkable. They had to put their differences aside. They signed an agreement in 1924, and 2 years later they merged completely. They formed Daimler-Benz, creating the brand we all know today, Mercedes-Benz. Carl actually lived just long enough to see it happen, passing away in 1929.
And this is where that inspiring success story takes its darkest turn. In the really fragile German economy of the 1930s, the brand new Daimler-Benz found itself at a crossroads. With the rise of Adolf Hitler, the company didn't just survive the new regime, it thrived by becoming deeply and willingly tangled up with it. The Nazi government just poured money into the company. They used its wins in Grand Prix racing as a huge propaganda tool to show off German engineering. Mercedes-Benz became Hitler's personal car brand of choice. And when World War II kicked off, the company pivoted completely. All civilian car production stopped. Instead, they started building trucks, tanks, and aircraft engines for the Nazi war machine. By 1944, right at the height of the war, Daimler-Benz employed over 63,000 people. They needed that many workers to keep up with the insane demand for military production. But the story of who those people were is just horrifying. I mean, just look at this breakdown of their workforce. It is absolutely staggering. With German men off fighting at the front, the company turned to forced labor. By 1944, as this chart shows, nearly half, 50% of the entire Daimler-Benz workforce were prisoners of war, abducted civilians, and even concentration camp detainees. We're talking tens of thousands of people, forced to work in these inhumane, prison-like conditions. After Germany's defeat in 1945, the company was completely obliterated. Its factories were bombed out, its foreign assets were seized as war reparations, and its reputation was just destroyed by its collaboration with the Nazis. They had to start all over again, from both the physical and, frankly, a moral ground zero. So the road to recovery was this slow, deliberate process. First thing they had to do was denazify their top management. Next, they managed to get a permit from the Allied forces to even start production again. They started small, making practical things like vans and ambulances, before they finally released their first post-war passenger car in 1947. And the comeback was honestly astonishingly fast. This chart just shows how dramatic it was. In 1947, that first bar, they produced just over 1,000 cars. A very humble restart. But then look at the second bar. Just 7 years later, in 1954, the company was pulling in over $1 billion in profit. It was a complete economic resurrection, and they successfully rebooted the brand for the whole world. So that's the journey. From Carl Benz's little three-wheeled carriage basically powered by Bertha's sheer willpower, through a bitter rivalry, a dark moral compromise, and a stunning rebirth, Mercedes-Benz became the global symbol of engineering and luxury that it is today. Which leaves us with a final and pretty difficult question. The brand's legacy is built on undeniable genius and innovation, but it's also built on a history of profound moral failure. So when we look at that three-pointed star today, what should we see? An icon of success or a cautionary tale? It's something worth thinking about.